Hello, my name is Maria Baby, and today I will be talking to you about algebra, the different types of ways to solve algebra equations, how math of algebra goes together with real-world problems, and overall how variables and different symbols can be manipulated into solving the equation in different scenarios. So algebra is just a branch of mathematics. It solely focuses on the unknown, unlike all of the other types of math before. So unlike all of the other types of math you've done in the previous levels before Algebra 1 or pre-algebra, you'll see that Algebra 1 and pre-algebra will solely focus on the unknown, which is something that is either an unknown variable or an unknown type of situation happening that you need to solve a certain amount of money or a certain amount of the rate of change, scenario, row, like slope, just all of this. Algebra is a very broad subject altogether. If you think about algebra, something like inequalities or slope or even quadratic equations and different constants and rises and runs might come to mind. So algebra is very broad. So to understand algebra better, you first have to understand how algebra will be able to be solved. First, most obvious one is you need to practice algebra over and over again to understand the equations. And another one that's very important to know is what you do to one side of the what you do to one side of the equal sign, you must do to the other. Yes, so this is very important because if you do something to one side, like let's say either multiplication or subtraction or even division, anything like that, squaring, square rooting, adding fraction, subtracting fraction, it doesn't matter what you do to one side. You won't be able to solve it unless you also do it to the other. So this is like a very important step. Yeah, so after you make sure that what you do to one side you must do to another, we'll review over this in the later parts of the video. You must also understand what the heart of algebra is. I'm going to go over that a little bit more. So in the beginning parts of algebra, there are symbols, there's all sorts of symbols, but they are mostly going to be written in either Latin or Greek. And what is very interesting about this is that these Latin and Greek symbols represent the different quantities of some values that are fixed or known variables. Overall, in describing their relationships, algebra, it's just about the different relationships between the equation and the variables and how that equation will be able to relate to the variable to solve the problem. And yeah, so basically another thing that's very important about algebra to know is to truly master it is that we'd have to be able to do testing, test ourselves, practice it, understand why algebra is how the problems are going and why the problems are going like that. If somebody asks you for the constant rate of change, if a ball is going 50 miles per hour and it goes for 1 hour, then what would be the final thing? Okay, that's not a good example. Let me repeat this. If a person runs 10 miles for t time, and then the total they ran 50 miles, how much time did it take them to run that amount? We'll go over this in the later parts of the video as well. So I'd like to continue by saying, welcome to Algebra 1. You've made it this far. That's a great feat, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this mathematical branch, which is both focusing on the unknown and thinking about variables. And the math level in itself could seem challenging in the beginning. I know for myself as well. I self-studied in the summer. It was very challenging, and it was a very rigorous course to do by yourself, but it's something that even if you're doing it with somebody else, if you are able to overcome it and understand it in a much higher and more sophisticated level, you'll be able to see world problems much more eloquently than you'd have before. So let me go over the next steps to understanding algebra better. A quick side note, algebra is basically something that you learn after middle school, but if you are learning it before middle school, that's also great, and you're very early. That's really amazing, and you should keep on learning all of these things because overall in the future, for your careers and future jobs, even in average day-to-day schedules like buying groceries or taking a walk, which is the fastest route to one place to another and how much time will it take me to get there, it's just something that will keep you on track and on pace. So yes, we've talked about algebra 1 being what you do to one side you must do to the other. Okay, we can check it off. So there's unknown variables, x, y, z, x, y, z, okay. these unknown variables, it doesn't matter which letter it is, unless, of course, you're talking about the x and y graph, or y and x graph. But yeah, if it's just algebra in broader version, it doesn't matter. You can do m, you can do p, you can do z, or f, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the math level is obviously established. It'd probably be something that's rigorous and both challenging, and I hope it be exciting for everybody who learns this course. And it's in Latin and Greek words and Latin and Greek symbols. But yes, it will be in Latin and Greek symbols at the beginning, and then it will go on into more graphs, arithmetics, inequalities, quadratic equations, polynomials, binomials, monomials. It's very broad. Algebra 1 is such a broad subject, and it will go on to geometry, which will be more about shapes. And Algebra 2 is even more broad, where it focuses on the more high-level end equations like amplitudes, velocity, like advanced levels of velocity, and being able to cube an unknown variable while having other situations in mind, and knowing how to solve word problems that are very challenging, and having infinite graphs, such as it's Algebra 2 is just kinds of Algebra 1. It lets Algebra 2 build off of Algebra 1, which is very interesting when you think about how overall it will be more sophisticated and refined as you keep going along in the math levels, and you'll finally be able to connect the dots on how one thing is connected to another thing, which is very extraordinary, and I think is something that everybody should enjoy. Yeah, practice problems is also important. I've talked about that earlier, just so that you can keep repeating the steps, and it's important to practice. I know over the summer, I made sure that I practiced every single time I got a chance to, every single day, because it's very important just to practice. You have to see the problems and understand the concept, but you have to also be able to use it in different equations, and yeah, it's very important. So also, you have to know what the question exactly is asking. This is kind of relating to different word problems that are asking maybe what is x, and you give them what x and y is. That wouldn't work. I know this is not something most people would struggle with, but it's just something to keep in mind. So yes, I would like to welcome you to Algebra 101. This is a super informational video, and it's very quick to follow. Okay, so an example problem, a very simple one, would be Sally went to the supermarket to buy balloons for a birthday party. She bought 18 balloons that each cost X amount. The total amount of money she spent on balloons was $162. What does one balloon cost? What does 192 balloons cost? So I'll give you a second to stop the video and answer the questions. Okay, so back to here. So we know that Sally went to the supermarket to buy balloons. So it took her so as we see here, she bought 18 balloons and for an X amount of money, and it was altogether 162 balloons. It's very important to ask yourself these questions before solving the problem, or as you solve the problem. So what do we know? We know that Sally bought 18 balloons and it cost her $162. So what is the question asking? It's not only asking what X is, but it's also asking how much money will it take for her to buy 192 balloons? And finally, how do we get there? Well, we get there by using everything that we've learned from Algebra 1, or using the Algebra 1 equations and how the word problem is stated and how it can go into an equation that will make sense. So we know that. Let's go down here. So 18x, which is the cost. It's important to name what everything is. So 18 balloons times x is equal to $162. Let's go down. So how would we solve this? Since we don't know what x is. X could be any number until we have proven otherwise. So the only thing that we know from the x side we're trying to get x by itself, because we want to know what x is equal to. So 18 is being multiplied with x, and that will equal 162. To counterattack it, we have to do the opposite. And the opposite of multiplication would be division. So 18x equals 162. Instead, we can divide 18, because we can divide 18 from both sides, because when we do one thing to one side of the equation, one side of the equal sign, we always have to do it to the other side of the equal sign. So divide 18 from both sides. And that would leave us with 9. So x by itself would equal 9. Because 162 divided by 18 would equal 9. Meaning that x, which is the cost, would equal 9. Yeah, that's the first part of the equation. That's the first part of the question, x equals 9. But it's also asking something else if we look closely. Let's see what it's asking. So it also asks, what does 129 balloons cost? So we know that one balloon costs $9. That means 192 times the one balloon cost would equal the final number. To find the answer, it would be 9 times the number. Just making sure it's okay. Would equal. Let me explain it one more time just so that it makes sense. 9 is the cost for one balloon. 9 times 1 would equal one balloon. 9 times 2 would equal 2 balloons. So 9 times 129 would equal 129 balloons. And 9 times 129 would be 1,161. Another way to solve this, to find out what x is that we can graph it. So we know that the cost would go here, since we've said that the cost would be x. And we can make the cost go up by 9, since we know that. Well, yeah, to show it on the graph. And then 18, since I don't have a lot of space, I'll do like 3 of them. And we'll start at the origin. And this will start at 1, 2, 3. Here would be 27. So one balloon, it's important to write what anything is. So here would go the number of balloons. Yep, it would basically look like this. I put it also on the negative side because maybe she's giving back the balloon and she's taking back the money. There can be many scenarios for on this region. But yeah, this is the correct way to graph it. The cost is here, and the number of balloons would go here. And it's going to rise over run. Is an important way to think about this. The rise would be 1 because that is the number of balloons, and the run would be 9 because it's the cost. And it would be forever because she could have as many balloons as she wants to until they run out of stock. And I don't believe that we've claimed the limit. So as we are wrapping up, the final thing I want to discuss is addressing problems to equations is very important. I think that's a very important tip to have. And knowing what the problem is will better help you address what the solution is as well. And also being able to multiply and manipulate unknown variables in different solutions. Like as you can see in the 3 cubed x is greater than 0. And there's also infinite signs, which is under that. There's the quadratic equations. There's different types of math. There's arithmetic, quadratic equations, inequality systems of equations, polynomials, binomials, and monomials. All of this is very important and just goes back to the heart of algebra. And there's also x squared and also the quadratic equation. It's negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Overall, as a final message and a goodbye, I would like to conclude that algebra, while it seems very broad, it also takes time to learn. And overall, it's such a fun and exciting subject where there's so many things that come into use. It's very important to the real world because we can measure distances from one area to another area. Without it, science and mathematics, everything that we know wouldn't be what it is today. And we can also calculate payments as we have done in the earlier equation. and also other things. So I would like to conclude by saying please subscribe and write comments on what you would like me to talk about next, and see you next time. Also, as a parting word, if you have any questions, also make sure to write them in the comments. I hope you can take away something from this video, and yeah, make sure to subscribe. Bye.